This is a VOD review for U Troll. This game, we are going to be focusing on the lane phase situation, the specific matchup that goes on here in mid, which is Veigar versus Ziggs, and then just kind of linear, just throughout the game, kind of see what happens, and just kind of try to look at what maybe could have been done differently to try to win this game. So initially, like I said, we have the Ziggs matchup, and something really important to understand versus the Ziggs matchup, in the Ziggs matchup, initially, is that you have to be very aware of your positioning in lane. So once we get in the lane here. So the big thing to remember is Ziggs Q can AoE onto minions, and so anytime you are looking to shove the lane, anytime you're looking to try to take trades versus Ziggs, anytime you're doing anything in this lane, you need to focus on not being inside your minion wave, because when you're inside your minion wave, it makes it a lot easier to get poked. And this entire lane is decided kind of on who manages to poke who more, generally. And the second dynamic is, right, junglers. Sometimes with more aggressive junglers, Veigar can really struggle, but you are against a Nunu jungle, which your Warwick actually ends up cheesing their red. So this ends up not being that much of a threat this game. So that's definitely a priority, because if you notice throughout the lane here, if you went back through and watched, or even like right here, you kind of end up just taking free trades, and Ziggs autos are always going to out-trade you more because of his passive short fuse. He's just going to get extra damage on his auto trades. So whenever you do look to go for the trade, both of you are going to look for a Q auto. Basically, you have to stay away from the mini wave, and you need to not look for trades until at least you're level 3, but generally you want to wait until you're at least level 4 or 5. That way your Q hits harder, you've got your prison up, and then hopefully maybe even after first back. But this lane plays out pretty standardly up to this point, and then Ziggs like DCs here under tower, and you guys just pick him. But if you notice, you took a Q earlier. You're blowing your W to farm, which is alright with the runes that you went. But you kind of end up burning through a lot of mana. Yeah, right here he DCs, and it's just really weird. So you guys do end up getting him. If you kill the enemy later, you end up going to push the lane, which is perfectly fine. That's your exact thing you should do. You back, you buy, because you had the wave crash, no point in TPing, right? So it makes sense that you walk back to lane. Ziggs is back, you kind of just, again, chill farm, exactly what you're supposed to be doing in the game. You have your Warwick gank, which ends up being pretty good. You get Ziggs pretty low, but again, when you go to fight, you end up just taking a ton of damage. Alright, we'll play this kind of again in slow motion. You run through his E, you got hit by his Q, on the minions. And then you start tanking minion wave here just to chase through, and you end up getting chunked pretty heavily for it. So even though it looks like a really good trade, you guys end up losing more HP. So being careful of the minion wave whenever you go in for trades like that is really important, especially if it's a slightly more aggressive jungler like Kha'Zix, like Lee Sin, like Jarvan, who can look for a counter gank that can really punish you a lot more for this. And again, you can just kind of take you more poke here, which is definitely hurting you, because now, even though you're in a state where you should be very powerful, you end up being very weak. Part of that is because you ended up only buying 1 potion on back instead of 2. Sometimes you can look for refillable. Again, we kind of want to stay around here, take some more poke again, and then take a little more, and then we're forced to back. Because right now, once you hit level 6, so the idea, and this is something I'm gonna touch on again here a little later. Once you hit 6, until you hit your first big item spike, you will almost never one combo kill someone. It's really important to understand that you're not going to hit the cage, hit your W, hit your Q, and then hit your ult and just kill someone. There's just not enough AP right now. You just don't have enough power. So generally, the way the trades kind of work in the lane is you want to throw your E up, and then you want to look to trade to chunk them down by generally at least 1/3 of their HP. And then that's when you want to look to hit the cage, to hit all your skills, and then to just kill the lane. Because if you don't, what happens in this game is exactly what's going to happen to you every time, where you look to go to trade onto them and do an all-in, and they kind of just walk away with like 10 HP. You actually get really lucky here because you live with like 15 HP. So this is kind of what the TP is here for. That is where Unsealed Spellbook helps. But I'll talk about runes kind of at the end because it's kind of personal opinion thing. A lot of people disagree on what to run on him right now. So... And that, the one thing you do have to note is the enemy team does have a Shen. Shen is past level 6 right now, so you do have to be a little careful about the ult. And so, until you really get control of mid here, the way roaming works, because we're also going to focus on roaming here, the way roaming works is you have to shove the wave in to the enemy laner and then look to roam or look to kill them and then roam. Almost never will there be an opportunity where the waves are kind of here in the middle and then you're looking to roam. So generally you're not looking down bottom here or up top here very much. Generally you're, entirely focused on your lane. Because this is how your trade should go initially and then you ult here. And so, it does shove him out, but it also isn't getting the kill that you want. And you are against a laner that you can kill. It's not like you're in a really bad matchup like Zed, like Fizz, like Kassadin potentially, where it's just very difficult to kill. You're against Ziggs. And so, I almost don't like the stay here. I believe this is an overstay, just because the wave had crashed. And so, excuse me, this wave would have been shoving into you had you just left it alone. Instead, you're going to come commit to like a full crash. Kind of works. And this is why it's an overcommit, because if the jungler comes and then your jungler's not here, you're chunked out some. Potentially very risky for you. Thankfully, your jungler was here. You guys end up just barely getting him. Yeah. So it ends up working, but then you also are in this really awkward situation where you either have to stay or you have to back and then lose a very large chunk of a wave. And so it's really rough. So the game right now is a little funky because Draven's 302, and so when you do look to roam, these are kind of the things that you want to stay away from. With the 302 Draven, dude's going to be absolutely massive. It's going to be very, very difficult for you to actually kill him potentially. Yeah, and again, you look for the all-in, and again, he lives with 200 HP. Fifth of his HP he ends up living with. That's why you want to look for that chunk a little before you look for this all in. Because if you just chunk them a little bit and then they try to stay and they're missing 200 or 300 HP, generally you can start looking for kills here. So again, just a lot of poke being taken. Unfortunate. One thing you are doing very well though, I want to point out, your Q, or I say your Q stacks. Your passive stacking here is pretty good right now between your passive and your Q. You end up just kind of overstaying here just a little bit. So the second you get chunked out, generally you kind of want to leave. You and Ziggs are kind of fishing for the same thing. Yeah, and because you ulted earlier, you have your ult to finish this guy. And because he's so low, this is doing full damage. So this would have done more than enough to kill the guy. It's just unfortunate. So you walk through 2 bombs here, which is some extra damage. You take the Q and you take the W. And Ziggs ults. And you end up flashing into more bombs and straight into Shen, whereas you could have easily flashed away over in this direction. Or just walked away initially. You just have to make a decision one way or another. So not the worst trade ever. Unfortunately, not the best either. TP bot here is really unfortunate. So you have to realize you're gonna make a decision right here when you TP, right? Because there's someone already in your lane, and with Ziggs in general, you have to be worried about your tower getting low at all because Ziggs Satchel, right, has an execute in it. So let me click on him. Ziggs Satchel has an execute in it. When your tower gets below 25%, as he skills it up, the tower gets higher and higher health where he can execute it at. So if Shen just chunks us out a little more, he can just execute your tower. And because of that and his passive, they just take it very, very quickly. This is one big thing. Here also was Pretty risky. You get pretty low, but you guys end up picking the Draven. The one downside is Nunu also just takes Herald. This is just kind of unfortunate. Nunu took it at full HP, came and decided to drop Herald mid. Camille kind of looks to hold. Your tower gets chunked out a little more. And you get back here. And then this is where your roam really kind of backfires. Because your initial roam, I would argue, worked because it got Vayne 2 assists. It got her unassist. She had another assist somewhere else. And you shut down the Draven, which is a pretty big deal. It's just a shutdown gold, and it gets stacks off of him that he's, you know, he doesn't have the most stacks ever because he's been cashing, but it does get stacks off of him. So at this point, you have to understand, basically, you can never leave mid lane. With losing the tier 1 tower, you lose a bit of map presence. You lose a bit of the ability to control the map. And so your sightline gets cut from a straight line across the map to basically a straight line between the towers. And so you don't control raptors anymore. You don't really control your blue very well anymore. And you have no vision anywhere around here. And so unless you know Ziggs is not mid, you chunked him out, you force him back, you just kill them, you see him roam or something, you have to basically stay around mid. And you're also starting to get enough AP, right? Because if you look at both you and Ziggs, neither of you are building defensive at all. So in theory, you should start being able to just nuke him out. Because like we said, passive stacking, our entire goal is just to get a ton of AP and to just start nuking kids. And you're getting to the AP amount where you can start looking for it. So again, if we just look at Ziggs, just like 3 autos took about the 4th HP off. So now he's like 3 autos and a satchel away from executing your tower. So this roam has to be done as soon as you know Ziggs has to back, or you've shoved this lane out. Because what happens here is you guys basically net even gold at best. Because you pick the Thresh. And then Ziggs is going to get your tower. So on a pure gold level, they definitely went out because this got them 1,000 gold. Whereas your kill got you 450. And again, if we have to, again, kind of straight line map control from our outermost towers, you've just lost even more map control. And so at this point, it's just really hard to play around vision-wise to be able to actually control the game. Especially because, like, Shen ults plus Draven, Death Dance, plus Thresh getting his shields up. It's going to get harder and harder for you to just 100 to 0 someone. As long as this game gets later and later, if you guys are kind of behind. And if you look at the gold, right, it may feel like you guys are ahead because it's 11 to 8. But you guys actually are down gold, purely because towers. You guys have 1 tower to their 4. And towers are worth a lot of gold. And so that's kind of where this deficit kind of comes in at the end of the day. You look for a trade, you end up getting the trade, you end up getting the kill. At this point, generally, I'm normally calling for our team to group. And then your one person, your top laner, who is the one who deals with split pushes, the one who has TP, is generally the one to go deal with another split pusher, whether it is a Shen top or if the top laner just wants to stay in a side lane and refuse to group and try to use that TP advantage. Generally, your top laner has to match. So I'll call for 4 people to group and I'll call for my top laner to match their top laner. And so that's what you should be trying to do here. Because when you guys do group, you guys do pose, you know, a pretty intimidating front line. Your Warwick kind of built like a derp with the Witsend. Kind of a little weird, kind of unfortunate, but he goes Center Hulk challenging. Your Camille's almost got that Triforce, which allows her to split. Your Vayne's 2-on-2 now, so he's pretty big. And you do have the Zillion ult, which does really help you guys here. It's just unfortunate because you guys end up not grouping very much. I do like this attempt at a pick. Right, your W and your ult almost execute Ziggs from 100 to 0. So like I said, you're getting that AP point where you are looking to just kind of kill people with it, which is really nice. And you guys kind of overcommit to this fight, which is really unfortunate. Because you kind of lose your tempo push here. And that starts way back here. Again, something kind of small, but decision making that could be a really big deal. So you see your team chasing here into a Shen Nunu, right? How easy is it for you guys to kill Shen Nunu? You know, your team just runs through a bunch of stuff. So this is generally where I'd like to, you know, look back here and just recognize you've picked the AD carry. Back off, reset, not reset the entire thing, but like reset this initial fight here and just look to push to take tower. And then if they miss position, you can jump on them. If you guys take too much poke, you can decommit. And then this happens by, right, you can't make all the decisions for your team, but you can back ping here to communicate you want them to back off. And so if this chase was on a lot squishier targets, if this wasn't Shen Nunu, if this was like glass cannon jungler and a more glassy top laner, like maybe Fiora or maybe a Camille who've used some things already, then maybe this is doable. Which is really not, because you guys are trying to burn down 2 tanks and chase, and then you're also pretty far back. Ooh. Yeah. At this point, because you guys got picked the way you did, you can't really pressure tower anymore. Kind of unfortunate. And again, you guys kind of hard commit for a Shen pick, which is just really weird to me. Because you're trying to basically pick their tankiest character, which is super difficult to do. And here, even in a later game, you're still getting hit by a lot of Ziggs poke. You're just walking even through Ziggs bombs. You're kind of panic throwing your ult a little early here. Because again, your ult's kind of a big execute. You want to save it for priority targets. Generally, if you look at their team, the 2 people you're saving your ult for is Draven or Ziggs. The only exception to this is if there's a tank on you and you have to get them off and you try to burst you have to try to burst them to scare them off, that kind of thing, then it's more acceptable to use it on them. Otherwise, you actually don't want to use it to try to pick just like a Thresh support. If it's a Soraka support, yeah, like if it's a priority support, which is generally just Soraka, maybe like a Karma or someone, when you're looking to pick like under tower here randomly, as you're trying to push when you know their team's going to be grouping, then it needs to be on priority targets. If you're just having like random pokes, like you're just walking around in your jungle and you just see the Thresh or the Soraka or, you know, whoever, then it's a lot more acceptable to just kind of throw it on a whim to try to just finish someone. Otherwise this happens, you guys take so much damage, right? Off trying to commit under tower too. And then Nunu and Draven actually end up 2-manning Baron. And at this point, it's just really difficult for you. Your prison at this point is more of a zoning tool over a just like random. I mean, this is just unfortunate. It's more of a zoning tool than it is just like a catch tool. I mean, it's both, but you really want to use it and utilize it as a zoning tool here. So instead of throwing it behind Shen here, you generally kind of want to wait until it looks like their team is trying to commit to a fight one way or the other and use it to completely zone one side of that fight out. Because here, you actually end up hitting nothing with it, and it gives them the opportunity to then hop on you here. And they would have hopped onto anyone. You know, it doesn't really, it's not the biggest deal that you're the one who got hooked. You guys just end up taking another really poor fight and end up losing because of it. So it's basically end of game. You know, we can go later in the game, but basically the same thing happens. You guys end up finally grouping, unfortunately. They just have the resources to kind of wrap up the game. Camille commits outside of under tower, which is really weird. Yeah, that's what happens when you try to ult tanks. You end up trying to ult him when he's kind of low and it just doesn't hit hard enough. Part of that is your build, because this is a very defensive build, because you're getting only 120 AP here from your 2 items, which is generally pretty low. Generally, you only want to go 1 defensive AP item. So if you notice right now, you're level 14, 42 AP, which sounds like a lot, but it really isn't. Because Ziggs, on the other hand, went 2 double aggressive items. I like to see some balance in between. And again, you can't always go to like pro builds or champion.gg and look at just like general Veigar builds that are doing a lot of work. And kind of look at their build path. And a lot of them are going the tier build for Seraphs right now. And then afterwards, again, it's a prioritization of more AP over more defensive. You're seeing a lot of Merlin icons, a lot of death caps, a lot of... On a rare occasion, you're seeing people try to go like Roa, which is a little weird. If you're in a more aggressive matchup, like a Fizz or a Zed matchup, it's more understandable to go this like two defensive item route, going like Abyssal Mask and the tier item Seraphs. But generally, when you're in this kind of situation where you don't have a lot of threat in the back line, you just have to deal with front line. Generally, it's a lot of bigger hitting items. Void Staff would have been a huge boon to you here pretty early on. Merlinomicon for the flat. Magic Pen, along with Stork Shoes, would have gone quite a bit of ways towards helping you as well. That penetrates most of Visage. It penetrates all of Cal. Draven has no MR, so you're doing almost true damage to him. Same with Ziggs. So cleaning up your build a little bit and figuring out what to go and when would definitely help. And I generally think instead of going the inspiration tree is your main tree, I think it's better as a secondary tree. And right now, just it doesn't matter who this guy is. I'm just using it to show you the general tree. This is what I like to see a lot more on Veigar at the moment. Sorcery, Arcane Comet, Manifold Band, Celerity, Gathering Storm. The Celerity, as weird as it is for the move speed, which can help you in the early game. Into the, early mid game where you kind of need a little bit more mobility to try to dodge ganks, even though this game you didn't. Generally, you will. And then Gathering Storm for just AP as game goes on. Your goal is to get games to 40 minutes. And then Inspiration. Magical Footwear can be swapped out for whatever you want. If you're in a more poke-heavy lane, you can always take Stopwatch or Biscuits. And then Cosmic Insight just for the 5% CDR on everything. Right, 5% CDR and then extra 5% max CDR, so you can get 45% CDR endgame. There's a lot of CDR available in the game. And the only other big thing I wanted to point out is that throughout this game, you actually only ended up using your Trinket Ward 7 times, which is a very, very, very low amount. And if we go back and just look at your early game, what you never do is... I understand you're always getting pushed in, so it makes it a little harder, but generally you want to try to Trinket Ward one side of your river at all times, because a lot of times the enemy jungle, even if it's not the best gank, will like to kind of poke in, or maybe it'll catch him grabbing Scuttle, or, even defensively ward like your own Raptors. I just want to see you using your Trinket Ward, because it just builds a pattern of not trying to utilize that vision, and it's kind of rough. Other than that, we wanted to kind of, like I said, and I'm just going through your checklist here real quick. The team fight isn't really what lost you control here, because your big team fight was like way over here. That was just this was more of a communication thing, trying to communicate to your team that you want them to back off, to not chase tanks, a lot of back pings. This is kind of where the game kind of goes crazy, but it's mostly just because of no map control, and this Baron grab is what does it, because Baron is really the big tool to kind of end games at the moment. When you get Baron, you kind of just win games most of the time. It's very hard to hold versus Baron now. Communicating with your team, kind of what you wanted to do, would have been a great thing as well. Again, something like Camille, match, Shen split, everyone else 4-man group, because when you guys were grouped, when you guys didn't fight under tower, if you notice, you guys actually ended up winning most of the fights. So communicating that and trying to force that would have helped you a lot more. We already kind of went over lane, getting poked a lot, paying attention to combos, how much damage they do. Generally, you can't full combo Veigar. Other than that, not a lot else, because yeah, we talked about everything, how to use Room Prison, how to engage, like, kind of how to use Room Prison instead of kind of just throwing it up. Kind of how to control mid lane a little better, when and how to roam, and kind of how to deal with your teammates. So hopefully that helped. If you have any questions, feel free to message me. It should give you a link on the coaching website to me. I would be more than happy to answer any questions there. Hopefully this helped you, sir.